If your brand belongs in the heart of the yachting world, this is where it happens. Yachting International Radio reaches over 1 million yachting professionals and enthusiasts every month, with 77 million impressions, 220,000 social followers, and 74,000 podcast subscribers. Our hosts are insiders, crew, captains, CEOs, trusted voices shaping the industry. This is targeted, high-impact advertising in a luxury niche. Visit yachtinginternationalradio.com/advertise. Your audience is already listening.
Top of the morning, folks. It's Captain Liam here. I hope you're well. Today I've got the honour of having Cherise from Yacht Pearls of Wisdom and also Superyacht Laundry. How are you this morning?
Good morning. I'm fabulous. Obviously, it was coming into my evening, so I'm just about to crack open a bottle of something bubbly because it's a Friday. So different stage of the day than you.
Yeah, I'm just on to my second cup of coffee here and I'm about to go into my tea. So, how do you usually start the day? Is with a strong coffee or what's your routine?
Strong coffee. I've got a 5-year-old, so we were up at 6, so then it's kind of hardcore cartoons because I have to get the whole house ready while she's doing her thing. And then, coffee is good. Although I can't drink coffee. I'm of the age now I can't drink coffee after midday. Otherwise I don't sleep properly.
Yeah, I've got into the decaf and I'm like, how did I get to this stage of my life where I'm looking at decaf in the afternoon? It's like, no. It's non-alcoholic wines or reduced alcoholic wines. It's like...
I'm not convinced about non-alcoholic stuff. We used to have it on board like spirits and they were as expensive as a proper spirit. And I'm like, but they don't do anything.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I don't know. I mean, I've been going to these events lately. Actually, I went to one, it's called M2, which is the menopause, M-pause it's called. It's a menopause event with my wife. And they had this bubbly, and the name will come to me. And it was a rosé and a bubbly, non-alcoholic. No one knew. And everyone's drinking it, thinking it's fine. And then you kind of about 10, 15 minutes into the kind of the start of the event, everyone's kind of like, is this alcoholic or non-alcoholic? And everyone's non-alcoholic. And they went, that's not very good. And then everyone was like, that's not happening. But then everyone kind of went, it actually tasted okay, though. I'll remember the name and let you know.
I think it's a bit different when you're like our age. We had a discussion on our podcast the other day. The youngsters today are on board are definitely a lot more health conscious than my cohort ever were. They are very, I suppose, because everything's recorded. So if they make any mistakes, it's blasted all over the internet. So they're very cautious. But as I was saying to one girl the other day, I was like, don't waste these opportunities. You are never going to be able to get drunk, sleep for 2 hours and go back to work at any other point of time in your life. Do you know what I mean? Really do try to make the most of those moments. Because when you get to my age, the idea of going out past 10 o'clock is absolutely horrific to me.
Yeah, I did a recent trip down to Mexico for a marina for promotion. And it was tequila, and they were open to it was like 12 o'clock by the time they were wrapping up their meals and desserts. And I'm like, I can't do this. And it's taking about 3 days to recover. And I'm like, I don't know. And the kids are up the next day. And it's like, but anyway, my son's 16. And my biggest advice to the youth now is you're going to make mistakes. It's okay. It's all right. And even my son and my daughter, I said, you're going to make mistakes. Don't be afraid of the mistake. Be afraid of holding on to the baggage of the mistake.
The regret of not even doing stuff is good. It will be so intense because, and it really is like, I'm born in the 80s, grew up in the 90s and, obviously hitting the early 2000s in my 20s, that was before anything was recorded. There were some wild nights. I would never want to see those photos ever.
Absolutely.
But it was always someone had like a disposable camera. So like my friends will have something in their loft, the deepest, darkest parts of house storage might have some photos of a couple of house parties. But I really wish kids would just relax a little bit. Like I don't want it to swing too much one way. Work is work and you want to be professional and everything else, but you still want to have fun. I had the best time on board.
Yeah.
You want to be able to have fun in these places. So I hope they don't go to Don't be too boring, because you're going to be boring eventually, because it happens to all of us.
It happens to all of us, exactly. I mean, that's why I kind of say what happens off the boat is off the boat. Whatever happens on your holidays, on your holidays. You know, when you're at work and you put the badge on, represent. And that's the image we're representing. But otherwise, you've got to live your life. Like, you know, you see all these people, don't drink, work, save all your money, you'll get further. I'm like, yeah, but what's the story? Where's the story? You know, like, where's the story? That's what gets you through tough times.
The boats that we like, my group of friends when we were working on board, we all got into having an alter ego name. So when we were ashore and we were out, we never used our names. So like my drunk name was Shaniqua. Like it's like Shaniqua.
Shaniqua's coming
Shaniqua was out, and there was lots of tequila, and it was all like one of my friends, we ended up calling her Babinda, because every time the sun touched her, she just got darker and darker and darker. And like she looked like she was from Asia, and she wasn't. She was from Poole in the UK. So we just found ways around it. So if we were badly behaved in drinkers, who is badly behaved? Who's Shaniqua? That's not a normal name. Like that can't be anybody, you know. So I would highly recommend getting drunk names are great. Really are. One lad had a name called Rango. He ended up going ashore in Ibiza and got really, really wild. He didn't end up staying on board for very long, because he came back to the boat and like, you haven't just been drinking, have you?
You can smell it.
Like, because I don't know if you've seen the cartoon Rango, which was like,
oh, that's right, yeah.
It's a chameleon who can send his eyes in different directions. So he ended up being called that for a long time.
Oh, anyway, we've diverged a little bit. And one last thing though is we do this thing on board sometimes where you pick these animals, these cartoon characters, like someone or the purser or the chief stew will think about which cartoon character represents which crew member, and then you post it up, and then each crew member, 12 or 14, have to then choose who they think is which person. And it's quite interesting because the chief stew is usually the only person who knows who's who, you know, and it's interesting to see the crew judge what someone perceives their personality as. And I was Bruce, the shark from Finding Nemo. You know?
Yeah.
Like, why? And they're like, because Bruce, you know, don't eat the fish. Don't eat the fish. Like, don't.
Fish are friends, not fish are friends.
They're like, Cap, you do get a bit intense. When there's a problem, you do come down pretty tough. Like, I'm like, that's my job. I don't mind Bruce now, you know? But
I like Bruce. That's
anyway, we're talking about the bigger picture. We're talking about women in yachting. Yacht Pearls of Wisdom is your platform. But right now we're coming up to this survey, which is very important in the industry. What inspired you to launch the survey?
So the Female Yacht Crew Safety Survey came out of the back end of last year, actually. So as part of Yacht Pearls of Wisdom, there's obviously different shows throughout the year, but the Super Yacht Forum, which is just before the Mets trade show in Amsterdam, is where, because the boats aren't there, it's supposed to be the opportunity where we can just have a chat. And that means about anything. So that can be obviously new regulations, that can be crew welfare, it could be environmental issues, but it's just kind of like, I suppose, it's close to a calm moment conference of industry individuals that the calendar gets, because there's no showy, jazzy stuff.
Yeah.
So I went to the Super Yacht Forum last year in November. And in light of, unfortunately, the tragic murder of Paige Bell, I was expecting more conversation about safety on board. You know, like, we've just lost a 21-year-old in the industry. We kind of need to know what actually happened. Now, obviously, the criminal case is going on and we can't talk about that. But safety on board and, you know, especially towards women, I think it really does needed to be looked at. So I was expecting at least a few conversations to be at least raised. You know, as far as I'm aware, since I started, a murder is probably, you know, this is the most direct murder on board that I've heard through sexual violence, suspected sexual violence that I'd heard. So I was expecting them to at least talk about it. And crew welfare was talked about, but it wasn't talked about when it comes to women. Now, one of the things that I've thought about for some time, because I was really annoyed when I left. I was just like, why are we not talking about what's going on? And I do think there's a reticence to separate the sexes. There are two, the sexes are, they've got different things going on. Now, with men, there is a problem with suicide. There is a problem with suicide in the industry.
Oh, mental health as a whole, like for men and men and mental health.
But for men, yeah. So for men, I would say it's more prevalent that it's suicide. For women, what's going on with women on board, it's sexual harassment, bullying, and it's kind of a load of different issues.
Yeah.
So when ICE1 presented their data, the data always comes out a little bit skewed if you don't separate the sexes, because all it said was crew members were calling about contractual advice. Well, that's true, I suppose, when you lump everybody together. But if you separate them out, guys were talking about mainly contractual advice. But I would actually quite like them to go into a bit more detail about that, because were they using that as an excuse to then talk about something else, to then talk about it to anybody?
Right.
But women predominantly, like we're talking up to near the 90s, are calling about sexual harassment and bullying, and just more of the stuff that women unfortunately go through. So one of the things, obviously, like I said, I got frustrated when I left. I'm like, I know that obviously entities like ICE1 and other support networks are doing a fabulous job, but there is probably a bit of a reticence to separate the sexes because they want to seem to be fair to everybody, which I get. I 100% get that. But it was one of those things I'm like, well, if they're not willing to do it, maybe I could do it. I've never dealt with men. I'm not equipped to deal with men. I can empathize with men issues, but I don't know what it's like to have a high-powered job with a volatile owner and then have 4 kids at home, dealing with wife stress and then dealing with boat stress all at the same time. I know I can relate to what it's like on board, but I have no idea what that pressure's like.
I can relate to that. It's intense.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not like I said, obviously a female can be a captain, but like there's nothing wrong with, if we split it out just for a moment, we can start to look at these areas in a bit more depth and service both better, if you know what I mean. So my idea was, right, well, maybe I can look into doing a survey. So all the survey is, it takes 10 minutes and it's just the female experience on board. And I hate that you use the word lived experience, but that's what I want to know. I want to know, regardless of whether you were on board 10 years ago, so it's open to current crew and past, so we can get a real clear picture, because unfortunately, you only ever hear of a Page Bell kind of scenario. We only ever hear the really ugly stuff. But I know firsthand that there are some great boats that in a world where they haven't got loads of regulation and structure, they are putting in implementation which protects women. So we're not hearing about the good guys that are helping people and trying to navigate these things and doing it properly. We had our ladies' lunch last Friday to launch the survey, and I told a story of a rape victim that she felt like her boat dealt with it so well. She ended up going back to that boat and working for another 18 months. They activated the insurance, they activated Medair, they did everything that they could to make her recover to the best that was possible. So she came out of that experience, obviously not unscathed, but supported, and what a boat I would love all boats to kind of do. Well, we need to know that boat. We need to interview the captain. We want to know why he did the things that he did. And then when we have another case, then we go like, well, why did that captain do that and that one didn't? Do you know what I mean? If it is, and also to see whether it always falls at the captain's door. Is it the captain, or was it the family office that got in the way, or the management company that just made her get off and go somewhere else?
Yeah, and what are those steps? What are the steps? you know?
Well, like I said, it's a grey area. No one's really laying down the law of like how you deal with X, Y, and Z, like you would expect that they would do in the Navy. So basically, I just want a clear picture because I don't want to go back to the forum again and we have no clearer picture of what the hell's going on. So we need it from the horse's mouth. We need it from women that have worked on board, because there was a couple of articles last year on LinkedIn where it was implied that things are getting better. Well, they could be, but how do we gauge that? We've got no data to say that it's getting better. And in the light of we had our first murder on board, you would say on the surface, maybe not. Because also we need to know whether is Paige an anomaly, a really unfortunate incident that is quite isolated, or have we got a bigger trend to worry about, which obviously the whole world is talking about trends when it comes to men. I just want to see the truth, you know?
Yeah. And we're looking for 2,000 females, correct? 2,000 women.
2,000 females, and I want good guys to promote this. You know, there are tons of amazing men that work on board. You know, there are so many of them, and they should want women to do this survey. It takes 10 minutes. They just tick whether they've experienced assault. Drink spiking is also a massive problem in the industry. There was just a big article put up in Palmer that crew were being targeted. We need to know these things, and whether it is just isolated, it's females that are being targeted for drink spiking, or we have a security issue in certain ports for all crew members. So it takes a few minutes. We're using the strapline, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yep.
If you, regardless of what your experience is as a woman on board, I want to know whether it was good, bad, ugly, because we need to know where we need support, you know, or process, or, you know, what do we need to help all boats function, like, you know, the story that I told the other day.
Yeah, well, look, I've been in yachting 25 years, and it's only the last 2 years that I've really kind of created more exposure into the industry, to be honest. And so many captains and crew are like me. They work on their yachts. They don't really get involved in other people's problems, and we stick to our little network, and we're a family, and life's good. And then you hear about these little problems on other boats, and then you hear about another problem, and then a crew joins and tells you about another problem. So in the last 2 years, I've kind of really, because it's the stage of my career where I want to give back. I really want to help. I've accomplished what I want to do in the industry. I love chartering. I love Alaska. I love the program in Northrop & Johnson. But there's also what's my role as a leader is to give back to the industry to make it better. And then I hear these stories, and people text me now and, you know, DM me on Instagram, and I speak to them on the phone, and it's horrible what they're going through. They're on a boat for 3 months and they're being told they can't leave until the end of the season. And one of the crew is what I consider abuse or assault and taking advantage of their position. And I'm not skilled to deal with these things, so I put them into ISWAN and organizations that have the tools, but I'm happy to support that. But I do believe it's an issue. What do you think are the key challenges women still face, though, in yachting, whether ashore or on board? Because I think it's the same thing to me now. It's the industry itself, whether ashore or on board.
I think one of the main, because you work, so like the best analogy I can give you, like, is if I'm in a bar, you know, or, you know, one of your stews is in a bar and a guy's being, you know, she's not getting the message. Do you know what I mean? It's just not getting the message. She can leave the bar. She can leave the bar.
Yeah.
But if he's on board, you can't leave. Do you know what I mean? You can't leave. So if there is someone, and also there's loads of other grey areas. So for hypothetically, so same individual, same female, because you've got it's also like, it's complicated because it's a work and a home environment. So one decky you think looked like Chris Hemsworth. He's hot, okay? And you're like putting out all the signals. He's single, you're single.
Is that when I see all the girls, the stews giggling, is it? Is that when I see all the stews giggling about something? You know, what are you talking about?
You know, you know, you're in the way of the toaster. He smacks your ass to get you to move out of the way. And you're like, okay, I didn't mind that.
Okay.
Unfortunately, that is a woman's prerogative, okay? Yeah. He's the right guy. You're in the right, you know, right. That's it.
There's an energy too created. There's an energy on yachts. Let's be honest.
but in the same environment, you could see another guy watching her reaction to him, thinking that she'll have the same reaction if he did it. So do you know what I mean? Like there is, it's a complicated environment to navigate, especially if you're young and you don't know how to chat to girls and everything else. But she looks like you can smack her ass and she'll like it. Well, no, that's not strictly true. It's just that she likes him. So there's lots of ways, guys, things can get complicated and tripped up. But because the main one is, and why, if it goes wrong on board, it goes really, really wrong really fast, is because you can't escape. There is no going home at the end of the day. It's a bit like what they say about kids and, with the bullying kind of thing. When they talk about kids at school getting bullied, at least they can go home. If you're being bullied on board, it's the same principle as what they're saying about kids on their phones now. Bullying doesn't stop when they get home because their phone still has access to those same friends that could bully you. It's the same principle, on board. So there's lots of tricky things within our working environment that's quite difficult to navigate.
Yeah.
I think that what I hope the survey will show is women are standing up, they are reporting. Whereas I think back in my day and some of the ladies before me, we probably wouldn't even bother reporting because we know that nobody would take it seriously. But now I think I'd like to see that we're at least trying to report it, which means then the industry needs to reassess like the reporting structure, making sure that everybody is supported and people take responsibility as well. So there's
positive changes. There's positive changes. We're now having I think it's an assault and bullying component to the STCW, the PSSR, which the crew of On Board and Bridal have done. It's only £45 and you add it on and you can do it remotely and it's perfect and it teaches you something. There's mental health aware, mental health first aid, leadership courses. I am against COCs. We're doing a good thing. I think the industry's in a better place.
100%. It's definitely heading in the right direction, but I don't, especially when you're talking about stuff like this, we don't have an infinite amount of money. So I think the survey will now fast track that. If we can get a really clear picture, then we can get hyper focused on certain areas. If captains need more structure and more support with reporting certain, criteria of incidences, at least then you've got a framework to work from. So then that takes your stress out. One of the things that a captain said to me the last forum, but the forum before, when I asked him about when rape happens on board, whether that's a crew member or a guest or whatever, he was like, you kind of just do what you can. Do you know what I mean? He was like, I would love there just to be regulations to just tell me step by step what I am obliged to do, because there's no clear definition at this moment in time. So
we have procedures for grounding, we have procedures for flooding, we have procedures for all these things, but we don't have procedures we have medical crisis, but we don't have things for like mental health or I see crew work so hard and they're dehydrated and they're exhausted and there's a family problem at home and it just flicks a switch and then they go into a bad mental state and they're in it for a day or two until someone whispers in my ear, Cap, here's the issue. And I'm like, cool. Or I go to the person and I say, it's all right. You don't have to be okay. But if you want a day off or a half day off or everything's possible. Everything's possible in life. This is yachting. But we don't.
It's also, accessing the stuff. They don't need to tell you. You can just tell them, call Meta. We've got, you can
call
just call them.
One.
You've got, you know what I mean? Like, Meta should be the ones that, the boat pays for this stuff. You've got insurance, especially with mental health, like the packages for, and all of the other companies. Even the basic boat insurance covers a lot of this stuff and crew aren't aware, You don't need to get to breaking point or crisis point. There is loads of other stuff.
Yeah.
I would argue that Ice One's probably closer to breaking point. Like that's an emergency that, your captains say you can't access Meta, you can't claim on the insurance, he's not paying attention to you. Then you go external. But you are, you're an employee, you have rights, and there is support built into a lot of what the boat already provides. It's just how you access it.
So the biggest, would I be correct to say one of the biggest areas of growth to make crew aware of this is the onboarding process?
Yeah,
Because I think in yachting we don't do it. We just do a quick, familiarization for an hour or two, sign some forms, 3 documents, and then start training them. But we don't slow them down and say, what is your support network? Who can you go to in the event? When you feel uncomfortable, who do you speak to, male or female?
Yeah, but it's just making sure, it's a bit like if you worked for like a finance company and you like get free booper and all of that kind of jazz. Like a yacht has a lot, like you do already provide a lot of support, but most crew members have no idea how to access it.
Yeah.
Like I said, I use it. Meta is most commonly known because if there was an emergency and your leg was bleeding out, you'd call those guys. But they offer also anonymous mental health. You don't even need to tell your captain that you're calling them about an issue. Do you know what I mean? Like you don't need, mental health is obviously a tricky one. And I don't believe that captains should have to take all of that on. You're not trained psychologists, but what you can do is tap them into Meta or tap them into the boat insurance, because obviously each crew member has their own insurance policy. They just need to understand that you don't need to break yourself by doing this job. If you need a filling in an emergency and you're full charter and you're in Palma and stuff like that, the boat insurance can pay for that. Do you know what I mean?
100%.
So like, it's no, I just think we need to change the mindset of, I've spoken to all of the insurance companies, Joanna Drysdale from MHG has gone into this. The support that they offer is incredible, but people just don't understand. A captain is the head of the family, but he doesn't have all of the answers. And I don't think anybody should assume that you do. But you do have at your disposal a whole bunch of stuff that you've put in place to solve those problems. You don't want to know what's going on in other people's heads, because also, if everybody's coming to you with their mental health problems and you're not a trained professional, you can do more damage to them and yourself because you're not trained to understand or process some of the stuff that you'll be hearing. So, it's very important.
I've learned that the last couple of years, and it's taken me a long time to realize that we have so many tools in yachting that we don't tap into. And I'm a big believer in third-party oversight. Like, I think transparency is everything, even if it's not in your own best interest as a captain, or a crew member. It's like transparency is the only thing that creates, I think, an honest growth environment, if that makes any sense, where you understand success and you understand failure and how to be better. There's 3 pillars to Yacht Pearls of Wisdom: security, support, strength. Which one do you think's kind of lacking in the industry? The security, the support, or the strength?
What's lacking in the industry?
Or where would you like to see more growth?
I'd like to see more power coming to crew. I think one of the main issues that we've had is how crew voices are listened to. How do they project out there? Like you having a podcast, and there's a number of captains that have got like dipping into the podcast, like long format conversations, I think are really helpful, just explaining what life's like, but also working stuff out. And I think the disconnect between management companies, owners and crew, I think a lot, the few events that I've attended, we're trying to get crew to come, but they don't want to just come. They want to be heard. Like, what are we coming for? It's great. You've paid for us. It's a nice ticket kind of thing. Yeah. But what's the point? Do you know what I mean? And also voices being heard where boats give crew members time off. You're going to some of these like training, some of these events, we need crew voices there, because in live time, what's going on board right now is not the same as what I experience. I can, it's roughly the same, but I didn't have real constant internet, and this isolation that people are feeling on board, even though you're in a confined space with loads of other people. Do you know what I mean? Because they can disappear on their phones. I've heard stories about like the the crew table chats, not what it was. There's lots that has changed, and that's why current crew voices are massively important, especially in this time of change of trying to support. We need lifetime information and feedback, especially if you want to put pressure on the industry to change their approach to mental health or support or all of, and dealing with these things. So I think hearing crew, what is going on right now, I think is probably the paramount, and then you know how to support them.
Yeah, well, there's a great company called Sage Seas, which is Paula, and she does a survey for the crew before the season or when there's an issue or whenever you like. And I'm working with her, and she does monitoring as well. But it's interesting to see now the industry is taking note and saying, how do we not only help, but how do we prevent these issues? And she'll do a survey on board Unbridled and look at all the crew, where we are, bit of a compass check. Are we going in the right direction? And I think they're exciting things in the industry.
Yeah, I think, the feedback is vitally important, but I think it's more important because we can now steer maybe a new course on, that's probably quite a nautical pun there, it's a bit rubbish. But no, it's, there are a lot of things that are moving ahead, and people are less focused on incident and now kind of getting some space to prevent. There are a number of individuals that work in the yachting industry that do not deserve to be there.
Yeah.
They do not deserve it. They are repeat offenders. They are destroying female lives. Yeah. They don't deserve to be there. And we've got to find a way to get them out.
And we know who they are.
Oh, yeah, no, a lot of the times we do. All of those horror stories that get spread around like bloody Chinese whispers, we all hear about them, but nothing's actually done. And I just think, this is why I really wanted to talk to you. We need the good guys to step forward. This is what you need to be encouraging women to do. You get them to do the survey, because good guys have got nothing to fear.
Yeah, good guys, it's our due diligence, it's our responsibility to promote healthy environments on board. And that only works when you push products like this survey, where you get transparency and the data. So when does the survey end?
So the survey ends at the end of April. So we've got, it's completely, so this is not Yachty's name, fame and shame.
Yep.
It is, there's no boat names, no dates, no, it's not about naming individual. This is just pure cold data. And I know it sounds like, a lot of women, like, they just want to get to the bit where they're getting the arseholes off the boat. You've got to start at the bottom. So we really need to know what's going on now and what's been going on, and to see where the trends and the patterns are, so we can start helping the industry make some changes, so we can get these individuals off, because they don't deserve to be there. And obviously it's horrible to hear about Paige's murder, but I've heard the horror stories of incidences that go on board are still coming. So we've got to do it. And also, like I said, if I'm the one that steps forward, because I've only ever dealt with women's issues, like I said, I would love to champion and help support a male counterpart that does a survey about what's going on with guys, what is affecting guys on board. I think this is the time to kind of step into what, who we are, what's going on with women and what's going on with guys is different. It's not exclusive, but there's different needs. And I would really love, somebody to just go, girls are okay with you just talking about guys for a bit. Like, honestly, we don't care. As long as we get to sort out some of the stuff that's affecting us, and it feels like we're being heard, and we maybe can get rid of, like I said, some really horrible people that just don't deserve to be in this amazing industry.
Yeah, true. Well said. I mean, and people can find the link in your Instagram. I saw the link in your bio there for the.
Yeah, so basically, it's it's the Female Yacht Crew Safety Survey. Everybody's plastering it everywhere. We need to get to 2,000 ladies taking part. So, like I said, they can be past or present. We'd like equal of both, to be honest. So any captain that's listening out there, just get your female crew members. It takes a few minutes to do it. And what it will start to do, hopefully, is highlight some of the wins, some of the changes that it feels like are happening, but we'll get to actually see them, but also highlight maybe areas of focus that we can actually support crew. And like I said, just make it impossible for horrible people to stay in this incredible industry.
Okay, well, you brought out some wonderful points. One of the big one that stands out to me, though, and every woman in the industry should do this survey, I think, not just limit to 2,000. I think the more that do it, the more clarity we have, the better the numbers are represented. So I'll be pushing at this week's Palm Beach Boat Show, which is exciting. And I'll go speak to every female, and I think I'll start off with, have you done the survey? No. Well, here's the QR code. Press this. I can't do it. I want you to do it,
It's really amazing because obviously, we've got a couple of individuals in New Zealand and in Australia, and then obviously the Bell family that their support network. So Nikki that are doing Protecting Yachting Lives, they're pushing it in South Africa. Obviously, like I said, we want past and present. I want to know whether it was bad, but it is getting better. It'd be nice to see that we're heading in the right direction, as well as some additional areas that maybe we can focus on.
You also brought up a really good point that I want people to understand is that in yachting, one of the differences you said when assault happens on board is that you can't go away. And I think that's one of the big factors that compounds the issue. You mentioned as an example in a bar where, a female might be looked at or something, she can leave that bar. But when they're on board or in a work environment in yachting, it's similar. Whether ashore or on board, you're still in this professional environment where there is structure and there's hierarchy, which creates a power imbalance, and people have a tough time struggling with that or seeing through it. What's one thing women in yachting wish captains understood? And it's a tough question. What's something you wish that men or captains or leaders understood from a female perspective? And right now I'm big on the menopause thing because I think I went to an event, it opened up my eyes, and I went, how do people not talk about this? The challenges a female has due to the lack of lowering of estrogen in her body. It's critical.
A woman is like the sea. There's a really good poem about that. A woman is exactly like the sea. She has changing moods, tides, you name it. We try to navigate it as human beings as best we can. Women don't want to be wildly out of control, but obviously the environment is quite intense. Stress levels affect hormones. It's something that we try to battle all of the time. We are a sailing ship with no stabilizers out there trying the best that we can, if you want to put it into an analogy. But if a woman comes to you and she says that she's she's struggling with something or struggling with some individual, it's really bad.
Okay.
Because most women struggle to come forward, in all honesty. And if she has got the courage to come to you and say, it's got really bad, because she would have tried to do it or navigate it or change the way she acted or all of these things way before she came to talk to you in the bridge.
So when and this is personal, but when I see a stew, crying or something, and that's as far as they'll go before they even ask for help. Would that be a correct analogy? It'll affect them emotionally, physically, before they ask for help.
You've got to remember the power dynamic on board is always out of kilter for females, because females are generally always younger on board. By the time we're 35, we're out of there, which means that you could have a senior bridge team which are all, captains 50, first officers 40, second officers 30, and your entire interior is probably under 30. Do you know what I mean? So
exactly right.
The power dynamic is always out of our kilter, as well as trying to navigate being a human, a female of that age and all of that kind of stuff. Also, we don't want to get fired. So, unfortunately, that is also a reality. A girl doesn't want to be a whinge. She doesn't want to come across as dramatic. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's lots of things that she will try to, like I said, if she's talking to you in the bridge, it's bad.
Okay.
That's probably my advice.
It's the tip of the iceberg.
She has tried to navigate a lot of it all on her own and she doesn't, or she's absolutely terrified.
This is great information for people out there, even myself, and I don't have many issues. I'm very blessed. I have a good crew, good longevity. I'm very blessed. But I do hear these problems and I see the problems. And, I look back in my career and I think of the things you're saying that people have come to me with an issue. And I'm like, okay, that must have been worse. Or they resign without saying a reason. And I'm like, we were fine. Your job was great. We were getting on fine. And then 6 months later, I find out that there was something between someone. I'm like, oh, well, that's not fair because now you've lost the job.
The thing is, one also a thing to bear in mind with especially sexual violence and sexual assault, victims, it's a horrible process that they have to go to. Okay. If something's happened to them, they might not even tell you that, if it's like arguments say they've been raped and then the next day they're out of there. They're running away from it. There's a big, I've brought it up with ICE1 a couple of times because when you talk to Nautilus, obviously union, and Nautilus would always advise for you to stay on board for, as long as you possibly can when you've got problems, because that's your place of work and legally it's easier for them to get your salary and all of that kind of stuff. But with ICE1, if you're a victim, they'll want you to get off and get you safe. Yeah. So, as an individual, that's two sets of advice that don't match.
They're at the top of the industry, two of the top names,
Yeah. So what the process for a victim and technically, making sure you get what you deserve and your salary and stuff, they're not aligned. So it's a very difficult, for instance, we go back to if you've got a victim and they've come to you, a lot of the time they'll hold it in or they'll do something back because they need the money also. They could, they need to wait until they get paid and then they'll run away. Do you know what I mean? Because they literally don't have anything else. So it's all, every industry story is completely different, different factors, everything else. Yeah. But if they've come to you, like I said, if they've come to you, it's bad because women are, it's tricky for us to.
Well, you've taught me a lot. You've informed me, which I'm very grateful for. You know what I mean? I think that the world right now, it is a different world.
To think about.
I'm looking for that poem too. About. Women in the sea. Women are like the sea, like the ocean. I'd like to read that.
It's on. So basically, there was a bookshop in Parma, and it was hanging outside. I have got a picture of it. It's probably in my Instagram. I'll send it to you. But it's basically the sea is like if you can imagine, if you want an analogy. Yeah. Sometimes it's calm, sometimes it's choppy, but a woman is always trying to. Stay level. She is trying to, make sure that she's steering straight and everything else. Every moment of every day of her entire life is. I
think that's why women are more creative and I guess and more, I don't know, intuitive. I guess they're different words, but creative and intuitive, and I love having females on board in different roles, and but what the difference is from a management perspective. Is let's say the men or the deck crew, you put them in a path, they will go in that path. They will stick to the railway tracks in a sense. They like structure. Whereas a lot of times the females, they like a little bit of freedom of movement. I guess that's because of the different emotions they go through, correct?
Yeah, I mean, they would see things completely differently. Like prime example, my husband cannot see some things at all. He can't organise pretty much anything, but I can see. You're like, oh, did you see such and such? Obviously their legs better and everything else. He'd be like, what? Yeah. You know what I mean? So women, we just tune into different things. We all tune into the same things, but yeah, I mean, it's the differences between men and women. There are differences, but I think they should be championed. And it's fab to be different because we can even be an even better team because we're tuned in. Yeah. So we see a lot bigger picture. And when it comes to guests and owners. You know, you want that so you can predict all sorts of stuff and you make the big bucks. And, you know, that's what we're here for.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's the client, how to give them the best experience. That's the tough thing. We do all this talking, and at the end of the day, it's, are they happy or are they not happy with the program? You know, and that's the challenge.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's, you know, and I, sorry to, you know, it is of my opinion. People can change, say me down. But the interior team, which is normally predominantly women, are the ones that make or break a guest trip. Yeah. You know, your tip rests on whether those women can keep their shit together to give the owners the best trip and holiday of their life. Yeah. It's in everybody's interest to try and make sure that those ladies are on their A game.
I agree, and that's why like people like Super Alliance and I Am a Guest programs and the COCs and the leadership courses and, you know, giving the women the more rotations and time off and space and personal time. That's where the value of that is.
Yeah. So,
you know, it's investing in that because they spend, I think I did a post recently, they spend like 70% of the guest time is interfaced with the interior department, the service department, you know?
Yeah. And if she's just been attacked on her break, do you know what I mean? Like, she's not going to go to the guest in the best possible form. So, do you know what I mean? And then the thing is, it all snowballs. You know, she's had an incident that's like shook her to her core, but you're on charge. She's got to go and do her thing. And then everybody's like, why are you being like that? We need to be on our A game and everything else. And she's got a whole mind mash of just horribleness that she's trying to deal with at that moment.
Well, I mean, I know we've got, you know, usually it's a shorter interview this one, but you've taught me so much, and the people, I think they should really watch this again and listen to it because you're giving key bits of information. Then what's your advice then for a female in that situation, you know, post-incident where she is in a service role? You know, how do you mentally find that balance? How do you go? How do you calm the seas? You do a little bit of meditation.
You need help. There's no way to do it. Like, in all honesty, if you've experienced anything like that, you know, and I know it's probably not a popular opinion, but everything needs to stop. If you've been sexually assaulted, you know, regardless of whether the boss is on or not, in an ideal world, we go, whoa, that's just happened. That is not okay. You know, and then that's when you need, you know, they need to understand if anything happens like that, you call Meda. You don't even need to go up to the bridge if you don't feel like it, if you're not ready to talk to anybody. But you can talk to medical staff that have been provided by the boat to deal with that situation. You know, it's in it, you know, PTSD and all of that kind of stuff. These things exist. In the yachting industry, and, you know, sexual assault or violence or whatever, you know, if one of your deckies beat 10 bells out of one of your other deckies, do you know what I mean? Like, it's the same principle, different incident. Do you know what I mean? You wouldn't expect the lad that's on the floor that's just had the crap beaten out of him to get up, crack on with his day. Do you know what I mean? But it's, you know, because there might not physically be bruises, she could have had the worst experience of her entire life. So
absolutely, it's interesting to know too. If is it always on board, or is it guest, or is it crew? Is it?
No, it's like, so, you know, the stories that, you know, I'm aware of, you know, owners, you know, owners are owners. Do you know what I mean? There is, you need a strong captain to put owner and owner's friends back in their box, because obviously they are young girls in the interior. And we all know that boats hire girl, you know, it's not unheard of. You know, I went for a job when I was just starting, and I wasn't tall enough to be it. I had to be 5'9" and had to be a size 8. That's all they were hiring. So, you know,
it still exists. I know captains the same thing. It's a cookie cutter. And it's like, I disagree. I think, you know, I think it should be more of a corporate world where you look at the skills of the person on the resume, not what they look like, you know? And then that's
but you say that, but at the end of the day, an owner's an owner, and that's what they want, and that's what they'll get. It's a private residence that floats on water.
Yeah, they'll express that they don't like it or do like it.
They get what they want. That's what money, you know, that was money. So, you know, you can't change any of that. But I think there's probably definitely bad boats out there that turned a blind eye, you know, to stuff, or make girls go away, or in some respects, I think a lot of the incidences that end up happening is because nobody really knows what to do. So it's just easier to just get the girl off the boat. Do you know what I mean? Because if she's gone, incident's over, I don't really need to do anything. Do you know
the
what
reality,
I mean?
it should be the opposite. You should be getting the person who's done the incident immediately off the boat, paid or, discuss the legal implications of paid or not paid or where it falls under the contract. Because the contract's quite clear against sexual assault. It's a terminating offence. So we talk a lot about the victim and how to deal with the victim, but I think more captains need to know how to deal with the person who's a perpetrator and how you rapidly put them in their place and take them off the boat and then provide that support network that the victim needs. That's the correct answer.
I think, it's the correct answer. But again, the boats are a grey area. You've got in all honesty, I've read stories of guys that had friends that they'd trusted for years.
Yeah.
And never in a million years would they think that they ended up doing what they did.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's one of those, and this is why I kind of like why we call it the good, the bad, and the ugly. There are really good guys out there, really good guys that stand up for women and everything else. But you get the wrong boat, even the good guy gets sounded out.
Yeah.
It's a really tricky environment, but more transparency, more information, it can only help. But like I said, boats don't tap into half as much as they can. Crew members, like I said,
you're right.
Your boat insurance, doesn't just cover physical injury; it covers mental health as well, and then personal, insurance after that. So you don't need to panic about, there is insurance products that, if your owner decides to, sack everybody, but you've still got PTSD, there is products that, you can have income protection, fix yourself. How empowering is that?
Yeah.
That regardless of whatever the boat owner, whatever management does, you have covered yourself for every physical and mental health problem that you can experience at sea. Then you can just tell everybody to get stuffed.
Bugger off and put your armour on and say...
Sure, at the end of the day, I can sort myself out. I've sorted my family out. I've got, I'm sorted.
That's what it's about, empowering women. I think that's, to me, it's empowering women in this space, because for too long the voices haven't been heard and they've been victims. And, that's a men talking, and it's easy to talk, yes. But as a husband and as a father of a young daughter, a lot of what I do is because I see what they either go through with my wife, and I see what my daughter goes through, and I see what young stews go through, and that's not right. You should be empowered. You should know the tools. You should have this, the path to success as equal to a man on a yacht, and have a career path that matches that.
Well, I don't know whether it can match it. Women are in it for like a short amount of time. We're not, you yourself there, you could work until retirement. Yeah. Women, it's not impossible, but women won't, they, either they stop getting the jobs because their looks go because they're older, or they're having families, and, it's not conducive for a woman to be at sea, have children and have a husband and everything else. So our priorities end up being slightly different generally. But we can have like I said, I had the best time, probably some of the hardest times as well, but I had the best time. And I just, in light of what happened to Paige, we need to know whether that is an anomaly or a trend. I think, the power that I've got, I just decided to give it a go. So we've got psychologists involved. I've got a professor that's going to help me analyze all the data. I've done it as professional as I could. It's completely anonymous. There's no reason for the industry not to back this.
Awesome. Well, I think they are. You've got a lot of, I know the groups that we're both in, everyone's supporting it. I'm going to go to the Palm Beach Boat Show, and I'm going to have my little phone there and tell them to scan that QR code. And when I meet every woman, I'm like, have you done the survey? Have you done the survey? It's the Female Yacht Crew Safety Survey. The link's in the bio on Instagram. I'll put it in mine as well. We'll share the post. Cherise from Yacht Pearls of Wisdom and Superyacht Laundry, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you. We can keep talking, and I look forward to
Yeah.
I look forward to catching up in person at one of these forums and maybe even see you live next week, maybe?
No, not stateside. Maybe next year. Depends how good the survey goes. I might make it stateside next year.
Okay. Now, all men out there, this is as much for you to promote as it is for females to engage in. So it's a responsibility of the industry to lift our standard. And the more we do that, the better our experiences are for crew, for clients, and at the end of the day, the industry as a whole.
Amazing.